This podcast is best listened to with headphones.
You don't want to go in there all by yourself, do you?
C.s.w presents Incarnation Red.
Episode 8. Firefly. I get off work very late. I live alone in a big city, and I barely ever get days off, so my grocery shopping tends to happen exclusively at night, and not very often. Essentially, I work every day, ever, get home, drink myself to sleep, then wake up and repeat the process until I've run out of food, booze, or both. And once I have, I walk to the local supermarket to do my bulk shopping to last for the next week or two. It's just a smaller, local place that lies a few residential streets away, but I buy the volume 1 wood at a mega department store. The only reason I do it, really, is because it's walking distance. I don't feel like driving after work. The sooner I can get that bottle home and start on it, the better. Besides, the walk has its other perks. In fact, I'd say the walk there and back is just about the only perk my life contains. You see, my life is made up of jobs. I wake up, which may as well be a job on its own with how damn hard it is to want to be conscious. Then I go to work, and after 12 straight hours there, I drive back home, which, in city traffic and with a half-driveled brain, feels not altogether unlike a job as well. A means to an end. In the event that I need groceries, the actual shopping process is just mechanical motions. Grabbing things, putting them in a cart, lugging them to the counter, swiping a card, then leaving. A means to an end and nothing more. And yes, even when I'm home for the night, pouring gin and tonics or just taking the bottle straight, isn't it the same? The taste of liquor is far from sweet, and the headaches and hangovers hurt, but I withstand it all for the sake of a reward. It's just another means to an end. That's all anything is. Gritting your teeth until you can breathe again, all to grit again, breathe, grit, breathe, grit. All of this to say, the only time of my life where I feel I am legitimately in leisure is the walk to and from the grocery store. I suppose it's nice to be able to look around me, see the lives of others. I see parents with their kids. I see bikers and dog walkers. I see younger people drinking and smoking on balconies, and when I see all this, a question runs through my head, every time, without relent. When is something going to happen? I suppose I always thought that in my life something was bound to happen at some point. Right? Surely someday something would happen. And I don't know what that something might be, if it'd be something good or something bad, or when it would eventually happen either, but that's all beside the point of whether or not something was going to happen at all. I'm not sure if I dread the point when something is to happen or if I'm looking forward to it, but I suppose both of those things initiate a desire for it to happen nonetheless. And it's always on nights like these, walking to the supermarket, watching all the passing cars and laughing people, that the question makes its way through my head. Nevertheless, I keep on down the sidewalk, then my eyes catch something. I look up and see a firefly passing over my head, glowing. I don't really see fireflies in the city very often at all. In fact, I don't think I ever have. They're not exactly common to areas like this, densely packed in concrete. Seeing one flash against the backdrop of urban grayness is odd, out of place, but interesting. After I've collected my 5 sacks of groceries, I begin lugging them back. The streets are quiet now. No cars and just a few scattered people making their way back home for the night. Perhaps I took too long at the store. People aren't usually this sparse on my way back. I pick up the pace, trying still to enjoy the walk as I do so, then see my apartment just down the way. I slow my steps back to normal, and as I do, the light in the window of the building next to me turns on, just as I'm passing by it. I turn to look into its yellow light. An old woman stands behind it, staring straight forward. I follow her gaze across the street. There's nothing really of interest there, just the opposite building. Nevertheless, she stares, blinking sleepily, just barely breathing. After staring at her for a while doesn't change anything, I keep on walking until I reach my apartment. The days go by, again. Like water through an hourglass, they pass until a week or so later I'm out of groceries again. And booze. With some mixture of languor and vague expectation, I sigh, slip my shoes back on, and step out onto the street. I start in the direction of the store, looking around me as I do to admire the passing things, the last glints of a dying sun, the smell of someone's backyard grill, birds in the air. Shortly after I set out, I'm stopped by a man in disheveled clothing. His glasses are slightly crooked, and his teeth are a stark yellow. He asks if I can spare $1. Normally I would, but I don't happen to have any cash on me, and I tell him so. This doesn't seem to be enough for him. He presses me further, approaches slightly, and I repeat to him that I don't have any. He keeps talking, so I turn and continue walking toward the store. Eventually his voice fades in the distance. After I've gotten my groceries, I head back the same way, waiting for a car to pass, then hitting the sidewalk. I make it a block, a group of bike riders coming near on the other end of the street. A dog barks in the distance. Then I look up. Just a few steps ahead of me, a half-foot over my head, glows another firefly. And it's at that moment that something strange occurs to me. It's a few moments before I realize it fully, but once I do, I can't ignore it. I stop walking. I look around. The barking of the dog has abruptly ceased. The bike riders that were coming close aren't there anymore, not at all. The whirring of their wheels is a ghost in my ear, and trying to listen for the dog, for the wheels, I not only find neither, but it feels as though there had been voices, people, groups of people talking, whether in the distance or down some of the alleyways. Voices that just aren't there anymore. City life has its ambience, its host of voices always present to some degree, even at night. And sure, sometimes it's quieter than other times, but it's never completely absent. Not like this. I look around. The street is empty of anyone at all. No cars are moving. No people are anywhere. But in the distance, just under a block away, I see something. Something in the middle of the street. A silhouetted thing that, in a strange way, looks half collapsed. Initially, I think it's just roadkill, but it's too tall to be that. Perhaps it's just trash, I think, but it appears to be moving. There's a loud clang from the alleyway behind me. I turn back around, and the lid of a dumpster swings open, and a man climbs out immediately, nimble-limbed and insect-like. He's already looking at me before he even fully emerges, and his second foot hasn't reached the ground before he speaks. He asks me if I can spare $1. On closer look, I can see that it's the same man who spoke to me earlier. Same glasses and yellow teeth, but he's different. He's walking towards me in a manner that I don't understand. His limbs move in wide motions like a cartoon character, and normally I would just think he's mentally ill, but when I spoke with him earlier, he seemed perfectly sane, if unpleasant. Then I would figure he's drunk, but his movements are too coordinated for that. Too eerily precise. It takes me a moment to recall his question. Then I stammer out a response that no, I unfortunately don't have any cash. And just like everything else, his response is quite different from before. He raises his arms and says loudly, "Money isn't everything, but everything isn't here, is it?" Then he jumps without warning into the street, struck immediately by an oncoming car. A shout blows out of me as I wheel around, taking it all in a panorama. The car veers, wobbles, then crashes its way over the sidewalk into a fence, stops. The man's body has landed on the sidewalk just at my feet, his head caved in and glistening red. His fingers grip tightly at the concrete. I spin around repeatedly, half words and half sentences fumbling out of my lips as I search for someone else, anyone else to help. But the street is empty. The sidewalk is empty. And as I pull out my phone to dial 911, I find that the street just in front of me is also empty. The man's body is gone. The car that hit him is gone. There's no blood on the pavement at all, or any damage on the fence that the car had struck, or any sign of anything ever at all. It's all empty. And silent. I look over my shoulder, into the sky. Fireworks are bursting in the air, shooting upward from the horizon, gleaming skyward in bright red streaks. They are the only sound in all of existence. And they are getting louder. I pick my groceries up and start walking again. I walk faster. A box of baking soda tumbles out of the bag and I leave it behind to walk faster. I walk faster. I walk across intersections without looking because there are no moving cars in sight anywhere, and the fireworks are getting louder, so I walk faster, faster, faster without even knowing why until I throw open the door of my apartment, stumble into it. And the second I do, the fireworks cease. That night, I drink a little more than normal. In fact, the next few nights I do, without really knowing why but not stopping to ask, and as a result, I'm nearly out of a 10-day supply of liquor within 5 days, left with just a few splashes of gin. So I'll have to go back to the supermarket again. There's no liquor store in walking distance, and anyway, the market has a quality selection. But I take a different route this time. Instead of taking the residential streets, I walk out of the neighborhood onto the busy main roads, take a roundabout turn, then find the supermarket that way. This shopping trip is shorter than normal, seeing as I'm just buying alcohol this time. But when I'm checking out, I reach into my pocket, and there's no wallet there. I scrape the bottom of the pocket, search every other place on my body, but it's not there. Had I forgotten it? I stop, tell the clerk that I've misplaced my wallet, and if he could set these aside for me to buy later on, I'd appreciate it. He nods, knowing me as a regular, and I step out of the market, gripping my hair and trying to think. But as hard as I attempt to drive my thoughts back to where I last saw my wallet, I can find only one memory. My last grocery trip. The one with the beggar, and the car, and the fireworks. And that goddamn Firefly. I don't take my wallet with me to work. I'm a perfectly fine driver, and it's not like I have time to buy lunch. And I obviously paid for the groceries at the supermarket that day, so I must have left it at my apartment. At my apartment, or on my way back to the apartment. When I was running hurriedly and distracted. But even if I did drop my wallet there, what are the chances of it still being there, on the pavement 5 days later? It's not even worth checking. But, well, maybe I can just take the same route back to my apartment and check the sidewalk on my way there. 2 birds with 1 stone. May not have the best chances, but can't hurt, right? So I start out toward it. I see couples passing by. I see trees rustling in the wind. I hear the distant barking of a dog. I approach the same alleyway where the man came out of the dumpster, and I see, on the pavement, my wallet, sat plain as day, as if arranged there for me to see. I marvel at it. How could it still be here? How could it have lasted 5 whole days in the open, ready to be taken by anyone? I don't exactly live in a bad neighborhood or anything, but in a city as big as this, how could something like this just happen? Regardless, I rush over to it, crouch down to pick it up. I brush some dust off it, open it to make sure everything is still inside. Since it is, I stand back up, and in doing so, come face to face with the glow of another Firefly. Just inches from my eyes, leaving spots of multicolored blindness on my vision. I shake my head, disoriented. The Firefly trails off, leaving behind the absence. The absence of people in the street vanished. The trees turned statue still, the death of the wind, the abrupt ceasing of the distant barks, and the Firefly trails away. I chase it. Immediately I set off like an involuntary reaction, my body moving without waiting for my mind. It glows intermittently, and I swat my hands out at it, reach to grab and crush it without understanding why, and it trails in dizzy circles, flitting here and there out of my palm's reach until the glow stops flashing. And the thing is nowhere to be found, and I double over panting, and... a voice from behind me. I turn over my shoulder. And I recognize what I see. It's the thing in the street. The half-collapsed thing I saw on my last night here. But it's much, much closer now. And I can see it clearly. On the street, right in front of me, is the disembodied torso of a woman, severed at the waist, and left tilted on one side there in the middle of the road. Her flesh is blackened and rotting, and her face is streaked with blood, but her hair, brilliant, blonde, and flowing, is completely untouched, like she was a prop in some elaborate stage play. Her blue eyes are fixed needlepoint into mine. A spine visibly juts out of her into the asphalt. Her hand reaches out toward me, and she speaks with a mouth that is barely there. Someone turns the corner of the intersection I'm facing. His arms do not have bones and they are stapled to his shoulders. He does not have eyelids because they have been removed. His legs do not move, but somehow he walks. His eyes do not move, but they look right at me. His mouth is slit fully across the sides like a puppet, and that puppet mouth can speak.
Sometimes things happen before you even
I
know
turn around
it.
and sprint. I try to think of any back roads to take back to my apartment, but I can't remember any, like they were plucked straight out of my brain, so I just focus on running straight forward. Even if this road led back to the supermarket or back to my work or anywhere else in this world, I would still follow it. I see the lights shattering in the sky again, and I wish harder than I've ever wished for anything in my life, that I would never see another light again, never see the red blood-like glimmers all tessellating above me, would never witness the sickly and unearthly glow of a firefly ever again, but the next light I see comes immediately. Clicks on yellow in the window just next to my head, as if it had been waiting for me to come, so it could reveal to me its contents. those contents as I slowly, shudderingly turn. For the old woman, standing and staring, blinking sleepily, breathing barely, and paying no attention to the ants and flies that cover every inch of her skin. It's hardly another 5 seconds before my apartment door slams shut. I lock it, throw myself onto the couch, shivering and covered in sweat. I grab the gin bottle already at arm's reach and down whatever is left in it. I pant, heave, and shiver all over, unable to stop shaking. The cold sweat encompassing my entire body makes me feel everything even more. The sticky leather of the couch, the sour bite of the gin, the grit and dust covering my arms and face, the draft coming in through the open window. I turn to my left. Yes, the window is open. The window is open. And it's at that point I see the intermittent glow, green and metronomic, flashing across my living room. In front of my TV. Over the gin bottle. The Firefly settles midair, hanging over my head, and as my eyes strain upward to see it, I watch as it glows a sudden, blood-like red. I am sitting in a backyard with a cigarette in my hand. The residential street I am looking at is quiet. There is a house next to me, its back door open. I hear sizzling inside, can smell cooking. The wind blows listlessly through the trees. I watch it. I feel it. A woman emerges from the door, hands on her hips. "And why was that?" she asks. I stare at her. My head feels like it wants to shake, to shrug, but it doesn't. "Well," she says, "guess I'll have to do it, won't I?" She storms off back into the house. The world is quiet. I hear birds tweeting in the distance. I lower my cigarette to my eyes, but it is hard to do this. It's still lit, even though I don't remember having inhaled from it. But its glow is steady, unmoving, like it's not actually on fire, just glowing. I stare at the glow. "Yeah, stare at the glow. Yeah, stare to draw the cigarette and I can I look up and there is no one there no one there blows through the trees. It must wish. Must fail now. Will that be all for you today, sir? I ask, then look at who I'm asking it to. There's a man across the counter from me, purchasing several liquor bottles I just scanned through. I look behind him. There's no line. In fact, there's no one else in the store at all. I'm the only employee here. He tells me that will be all, and I tell him the total. He reaches into his pocket, then looks startled. He scrapes the bottom of his pocket, searches every other place on his body, but it's not there. He looks up at me in a mixture of apology and bewilderment. He tells me he's sorry, but he can't find his wallet. He must have forgotten it, left it behind somewhere. He asks me if I can spare $1. I tell him it's okay. I reach into my pocket and show him my wallet. Is this it? I ask him. He stares at me as if unsure how to respond. He begins to back up, eyeing me up and down, and head towards the door. So I tell him, money isn't everything, but everything isn't here, is it? He walks away. I turn around and the bottles of liquor on the wall behind me while beginning to fall and shatter on the There is screaming now. My hands slip on the bloodstained tile, and I can't keep balance. There's blood. Blood all over my arms and hands, and I feel a droplet running its way down my face. But the body on the floor is not screaming. In fact, it's not moving at all. The screaming is coming from behind me. I stand up, stumbling and wavering. I rub my face, open my eyes wide, breathe heavily. I turn over my shoulder and see a woman screaming, running her hands through her matted hair, shrieking at me from the living room of a house I don't recognize. "And what was it for?" she asks in a hoarse, pained voice. "Was it just for you to see it all of this? But why would you, of all people, have done something like this? Why?" She breaks back down into incomprehensible sobs. I look her in the eyes. Then I realize the door breaking through the fence into the street, and I turn to see a car coming. Now I'm looking at the old woman, but I'm behind her. I'm inside the room, the lights off. I can see the window and the street it looks out on. My street. And I can see the ants and flies covering her entire body. Even more clearly when she turns and looks at me. And her gaze on me is as blank and sluggish as when she gazes on anything else. And I look back at her. "Where am I?" I ask her. "What is going on?" "Come here now," she says to me. "You're going to miss the fireworks." She beckons me toward the window. I follow. She turns her gaze back out onto the street, and I follow that too. And it isn't very long before I see myself sprinting down the pavement, stopping as soon as I see the yellow light of the room flicker on. I watched myself turn toward the window
mich ein Contract with me.
Now there is a silence. A silence that is immortal. A silence that would outlive me and everyone and everything. But right now it feels as if it has already done just that. Has already outlasted everyone, everything, and time itself. And I am a witness to it. I have witnessed the entire thing. And I am what's left. I am the last thing left for it to outlive. And it won't take long. My spine jutting into the asphalt, my flesh blackened and rotting, tilted on one side here in the middle of the road. I can't imagine I'll last much longer. But who knows? Who knows what might come next? After all, sometimes things happen before you even